Hey guys, welcome back to another Produce Like series video. And today I'm really excited to be talking about Doechii, who just won her first Grammy for her album Alligator Bites Never Heal. If you haven't checked that out, you should really listen to it. It's pretty amazing. I'd say she's got a pretty bold but also refined style that I think innovates, but it also harkens back to older styles of music, namely boom bap, which I love, and I've been waiting for a comeback for a long time now. So I'm pretty excited that it's like starting to get there a little bit. Now, if you take a listen to her catalog, it's pretty diverse, and so what we're gonna need to do is pick a lane to focus on. So I'm going to choose Denial is a River and NISSAN ALTIMA, which are my two favorite songs on the album. And we're gonna kind of draw influence from mainly those two songs, but also take a look at, you know, some of the other aesthetics that are a part of her sound in the other songs in the album as well, and mix them together and try to come up with something cool together. So let's get to it. So for this style, I would recommend starting with between 87 and 97 beats per minute, just like that standard boom bap tempo. There's a couple of different ways that we can approach the drums here. In general though, we're looking to create some pretty saturated drums, and we want to sequence our drums using a chopped up modern style dry drum loop. I'm gonna use this loop here, and this is the style that we wanna go for. I'm going to suggest that we use kind of a mixed approach, and what I mean by that is for the kicks, we're going to use just a normal sampler because we want the kick to be consistent throughout the groove. But for the snares and the hats, we're actually going to use variations, and we're going to use a drum rack where we can trigger different samplers for all of those variations to create, you know, more of a realistic style groove, because that's kind of what I hear that Doechii likes a lot. So let's just drag this into our MIDI track. I have one called Kick right here. So let's just start by finding a nice kick that we can start with. I like to just go through and find one that doesn't have like an open hat on it. Yeah, maybe this one here. So if we just tighten up the flags here and just trim it down to the region that we're interested in. So you can hear that there's that hat in there too, and that's okay, because what we can do is actually just shorten the envelope. You won't even really notice that that hat is there anymore. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna slow the attack down, and I'm gonna bring the sustain all the way down so that every time I hit the note, kind of squelches it. Yeah, something like this. The other thing I'm gonna do is just add like a very subtle high pass filter. So I like to use this OSR kind of analog style filter. It's just ever so slight. The reason I'm going to do that is because I want to add some more oomph to the kick with using a modern style kick. So I have this other one that I like a lot, this one here. So let's layer this on top of our kick here. I'm just going to bring this way down. One kind of a cool tip too is when you're layering stuff like this together, you can play around with the starting flag for the region. So like I added this new kick here, and you can change the phase relationship if you kind of move the flag around. Yeah, maybe something like this. So now let's apply a similar process, but to the snare. Now, here's kind of where the mixed approach comes in, because I'm actually going to use a drum rack instead of a sampler for this part, because I'd like to have multiple variations at play, like in our groove. So it's not just hitting the same snare sound over and over again, like a more classic boom bap style. Let's bring up a drum rack here. You can head to these these grid quadrants and just select C3, because it's right in the middle of the keyboard. It makes it really easy to just, you know, get your groove going. So let's rename this snare, and I'll call it a nice blue color. So now let's just drag our drum sound right to C3, and I'm just gonna select a nice starting snare sound somewhere. Let's see here. Like this one I think is pretty good. If you go up to the top left corner of the drum rack and you open up the macro controls, I really like to assign the attacks, decay, sustain, and release to macros so that I can control the envelope of all the snare drums at the same time. Because if you imagine you wanted the attack to be a little bit slower on all of the snares, it's really a pain to do them one at a time. So macros allow you to do everything all at once. All you need to do is right click and say the attack, for example, you right click, go to map to macro 1, do the same thing for decay on macro 2, sustain on macro 3, and release on macro 4. And just for good measure, I'm actually also going to activate this filter here, and we'll use our normal analog style filter. And I'm going to map that to macro 8. We can basically dial in our envelope right here. And whenever we create a copy of the sample or the sampler on each pad, then we can basically apply the macro envelope to all the samples at the same time. So let's just let's increase this attack a little bit. And I kind of want to bring the sustain portion down, and maybe we'll set the decay somewhere around there and the release like about here. Yeah, so it's nice and snappy. And so now let's hold Alt and then drag our first sample over to the pad next to it so we can select a different portion of the drum loop and apply, you know, basically the same envelope and macros to that sample. We can even use this next snare too, right? And we'll rename this 2, and we'll do the same exact thing and make sure we have 4 variations. Beautiful. So now we have our 4 snares right here. And I'm just going to apply the same exact process to select like about 5 or 6 different hats, and then we'll get on to making the groove. All right, so we've got our kick now, our snares, and our hats. And I'm going to go for a similar type of groove to what's in Denial as a River. So let's see what we can do here. I'm actually going to put a saturator on the drums bus, which I like to do anyway, but this is going to be pretty extreme. Here's the saturator, and I'm actually using a type of saturation called soft sine, which is a little bit more obvious, I'll say, than the analog clip style saturation. So here's kind of what it sounds like with and without. A good tip too for the saturator is that you can see on the bottom left, there's this bass control, B-A-S-E, bass control. And this is really nice if your kick is controlling too much of the saturation and you just want it to be focused on the other drum elements. You can bring this bass down a little bit. Like the low end won't affect the saturation nearly as much. So if you bring this all the way down or up, see? Cool, so now let's move on to the sampling portion, and we're gonna be going for kind of like the Denial as a River style chops. I like to call them stabs. When we're sampling, we wanna look for like little sections, especially in jazz records, where you have a chord that's played like on a piano, or it could be like a brass section or something, and also in combination with the bass and maybe a kick, but you don't want anything, it's kind of just like a staccato chord that plays like this. So I have this sample.
Life can be mighty monotonous. We're always battling boredom. Well, tell me, where has it gotten us? Everything.
You hear those different stabs here? And I really liked this one because it has kind of that reverb tail on it too. I'm going to use this, and let's see if we can come up with something cool with this little piece here. Maybe we could even follow the kicks a little bit here like this. Instead of actually using audio clips here and editing them around and moving them around, I'm actually going to put this into a sampler because I want to be able to play it in and change the pitch of it. And that's going to be an important part of that Doechii sound, is especially in Denial as a River and Nissan Altima, like you're going to hear lots of like chromatic changes with the stabs. So this is the kind of sound that you're going for, like. So let's see if we can come up with something here. One thing to take note of is that a lot of times the stabs that she likes to use, the chromatic ones, are piano based. And so in this case, ours isn't necessarily piano based, but I guess more orchestral. What we're going to do is I'm going to recreate the chord with a piano, and then I'm going to layer that underneath to help thicken it up and also maybe get it closer to that Doechii sound. Okay, so here's the original sound, and here's the sound that I recreated and played on a piano. So now we've got our piano in a sampler, but actually when I was recreating it, I couldn't decide if I wanted to use the octave up piano version or the octave down, so I just used them both. So here's the octave down one, and here's the octave up one. So I just layered them together like this. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like with our original stab. So it adds a nice thickness to it. So now let's take a listen to what it sounds like with the drums with those two things together. So now we need to add in some bass, and I think this will actually be the easy part. Now I have this bass sound that I love to use on this style of music, and it's this deep bass sound that I actually made in a video called Essential Hip Hop Bass, if you want to see how I made that. It's very simple and straightforward, but that's the type of bass that we need, just something that hangs there down low, like a subby kind of bass. Now, when you get to this point in sampling, sometimes it's like, oh, what should I add next? Like, how do I move forward? What I like to do a lot of times is find where the main part of the sample is that you sampled. This part. So what you do is you look before and after that little chop and see if you can come up with an idea that is related to that information before and after. So if I listen to shortly before our clip here.
Well, tell me, where has it gotten us?
And this vocal like sample right here would be so cool, I think, at the beginning of the song as kind of an intro. Maybe we could even put some like dub delay at the end there. So if we did something like this. Boom, and then the beat starts. And I only want that delay to be at the very end of the phrase. So I'm gonna turn off the delay. I'm gonna right click and go to show automation. I'm gonna press B to get my pencil out, and then I'm gonna draw in just that on portion at the end.
Where has it gotten us?
One thing we need to do too is we need to lower the pitch a little bit of this sample so that it properly bridges to the way that I play the sample chops in there.
Well, tell me, where has it gotten us?
I think this is sounding good so far. We just need to add in a couple of variations, and one easy way to do that is with the drums, and especially with a loop like what we were working with, because you have all those, like I said, interesting kind of snare rolls and stuff. So what I would do is pick out a couple of those and find some that kind of strike your ear. So if you went and did something like this, yeah, grab like this little hit here. Yeah, we want to add in those little details, so let's do that. I think we also really need like a drum fill at the very end there. And unfortunately for us, there's no tom fill inside of that original drum loop. So we're gonna have to look for a tom fill from a different loop, but I think I know just the one that we can use. So take a listen to this one. It's called Alfredo by AJ Hall. I just want to use these last drums here. Yes, this is coming along. Another thing that I noticed she likes to do is add in like little effects style sounds into your, like the beginning of your drum groove. So what I'm talking about is this kind of stuff. If you just chop up like a tiny little section of that and you put some delay on it, it kind of takes the place of like what a crash would do in a like a more conventional drum loop, right? So if you just take this first tiny little piece and you put some delay on it. Yeah. I want to find one thing that we can use to transition between bringing that loop back over and over again, because I really like the way that it's sitting right now. I don't want to change like the groove of like the sample chops. So when I was doing some sample hunting, I came across this record called Afro Boogaloo Twist, which I hadn't heard before, and it sounds like this. It almost sounds a lot like a Tribe Called Quest style record or something, or something that they would sample rather. It might seem a bit weird, but I kind of want to put this in between when we bring the loop back in. So check this out. Like it might sound like this. And then it comes back in right there. I think this could be kind of a cool transition. So let's make this sound better by, I'm gonna kind of make it sound more like a telephone, where I put a low pass and a high pass filter on there. And then just before it hits, let's put like a little, like a vinyl slowdown kind of thing. So if you go to, if you press Shift Tab and you go to this view where you can look at your clip envelopes, and you go to transposition, what you can do is actually press B and get your pencil out, and you can draw in just like a little, like a tape stop style thing. So if I draw something in like this and I hold Alt and get rid of a couple of these dots here. Yeah, so something like this, right? But my favorite part about doing all of this is checking with the acapella to see how it vibes with her voice. So let's pull in her acapella and do the acapella test.
Well, tell me, where has it gotten us?
Platinum record this, Bible record that. I'm making so much money, I'm all over the net. I'm moving so fast, no time to process. And no, I'm not in the gang, but I'm always on set. Wristwatch, drip drop, label with the TikToks. Now I'm making TikTok music, what beef? I need a cleanse, need a detox, but we ain't got time to stop. The charts need us. I like pills, I like drugs, I like getting money, I like strippers, I like day drinking and day parties in Hollywood. I like doing Hollywood shit, snorted probably would. What can I say? The shit works, it feels good, and my self-worth's at an all-time low. And just when it couldn't get worse, my ex crashed my place and destroyed all I owned. Whoopsie, made a oopsie, $100,000.
So there we have it. I think it's a slightly different way of working than normal, where you're using just like one drum hit and you're sequencing out on 3 pads or whatever. This is a little bit more intricate. You have multiple variations of the drum hits, and it makes it sound a little more realistic and human, especially if you play it in. So I always recommend you do that. If you want to go for this sound, don't forget about your stabs, don't forget about your saturation on your drums bus and those variations in your drum sequencing, and you'll be well on your way to getting that type of sound, or just, getting a different type of sound than you normally go for. So if you have any questions about anything that I did here, I'd be more than happy to get back to you down below. And as always, happy music making, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.